What are the major stages of testing? There are several approaches for the division of the stages of testing, and what we will see are the major stages of testing. It's probably rather common to find other stages of testing in the literature and over the web. So what we can do is to actually think that within these three stages, we can always include the other stages that you find in the literature. So we have development testing, release testing, and user testing. And we can consider this as looking from a different perspective. So development testing is intimately related to the lines of code that are being produced. So this is the first stage of testing, where you are at the core, you are building your code, and you can do development testing even when you are developing the core of the software product. Then you have an additional stage, stage number 2, where you can conduct the release testing. And usually, this release testing is conducted by a separate testing team, because at the level of a release, you are already providing a version of the system that actually works and has some features that can be exercised, and you don't actually need the developers that are involved in the development testing to also conduct the release testing. So inside the development testing, the core stage of testing, it is expected that the developers play an important and crucial role. The idea is for the developers to actually contribute to the tests that are made inside of this stage. Regarding the release testing, this is an outer layer of testing. The idea is to actually have a separate team that will address all the defect testing and all the validation testing that are required. They are both required regarding the user. And finally, we will have user testing. For instance, it's quite common to hear about alpha testing, beta testing, and all of these levels of testing are grouped inside the stage that is called the user testing. This is where the actual users or potential users of a system are able to test working software and actually check on their own environment if the software product has defects, and actually they can also validate the features of the system. Inside of the first stage of testing, it is also possible to layer several levels of testing. So if we can consider several testing activities, the idea is for the developers, the actual team that develops the system, they can actually promote unit testing. So when we have unit testing, it should be made by developers. It should be made by the person that is actually creating and developing the software, the feature, and it is the person that has a lot of object classes with methods that should be tested on an individual basis. So the idea is that when you have unit testing, it makes sense that unit tests are made by programmers, by developers, and these developers are also concerned with automating these tests. So whenever we speak about unit testing, we are speaking about tests that are conducted by a programmer and that are automated. So they are coded also. When we're speaking about component testing, when you already have several classes that are integrated with one another and ultimately can achieve a package of or a module of functionality that could easily be addressed by a graphical user interface, okay? We can see a component forming and growing. So the idea of component testing should also be made by developers, okay? But it's not, and usually it's also on a programming basis. So these kind of tests are also coded, and it doesn't make sense to speak about component testing if you don't have access to the code that you are testing. And in a final layer inside of the stage of development testing, we have the system testing. This last layer is, since it promotes the complete features of the system, as a software product that is tested as a whole, the idea is that, and sometimes this happens, that system testing is not only addressed by programmers, but is usually tested by a separate Q&A team. So the quality assurance team, the testers team, an external team also promotes this last stage or this last layer inside of the development testing. System tests can be automated, but they don't have to be automated because it's possible to conduct them on a manual basis.